All right, guys, we're good to go. Thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate it. Everyone on the live stream, thank you. Welcome. Really honored to be here. This is really cool to be back in Amsterdam. My name is Kevin Jones. This is pretty much all my contact info, so if you guys scan this will get you access to like my Twitter, pretty active on there, and just, you know, if you guys have any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out. I'll also be around here. I am currently working as a developer relations engineer at Edge & Node as of today. So I'm pleased to announce that, and I'm also a member of Buidl Guidl, which is basically a group of developers that helps prop up the Ethereum ecosystem around developer tooling. So what I'm going to be talking about today is Scaffold ETH, which is an awesome toolkit that essentially gets you kind of up and running quickly if you want to build a dApp. Anyone who's interested, I wrote a Mirror XYZ post about Scaffold ETH 2, and more specifically about our integration with the graph. And so this would be a really cool kind of walkthrough if you're interested in building a dApp. Pretty much a lot of the stuff I'm going to go through is in here, at least some of it. I'm not going to get into the graph because I only have a limited amount of time, but this will be a good resource if you want to learn how to build a dApp and use the graph as well. This is a really good walkthrough, so I'd highly recommend that. But we don't have any slides here. I'm just going to actually kind of delve in, and we're going to start toying around with Scaffold ETH. So if you do a search for Scaffold ETH, there's two versions of Scaffold ETH. There's the original Scaffold ETH, which is still awesome, still works, but we've kind of come out with a new version, actually within the last, it's only been like a couple months now. And Scaffold ETH 2 has some kind of upgrades that we've done to the project. More specifically, it's everything that the Scaffold ETH had, but it's a little bit leaner, and it's kind of built around Next.js, so Next.js on top of React, obviously, and it uses Rainbow Kit. It still comes with Hardhat, which is like the default kind of go-to Ethereum virtual machine tooling, but it also uses WAGMI, and it's also based in TypeScript. So if you prefer JavaScript and you prefer React as opposed to Next.js, you could technically use Scaffold ETH 1, and it's still compatible. But for the sake of being up to date and using something that's kind of actively developed, Scaffold ETH 2 is where to go. So let's just get right into it. So if you go to the GitHub, it's going to walk you through what you need. You need to have Node.js installed on your computer, right? You need to have Yarn Package Manager installed. Make sure you have the most up-to-date version of Yarn, because if you're using like an old version of Yarn, it won't work. So upgrade your version of Yarn. And obviously you need Git. And pretty much the walkthrough that I'm going to go through, all the instructions are here. Also inside of my blog post, there's a walkthrough that you can do to get up and running. So let's just kind of dive into it. So I've basically gone ahead and I've checked out the repository here. And I've got everything up and running. So I've already did a Yarn install for you guys, just so you don't have to sit here and wait, because it takes a few minutes to run. But when you do a Yarn or a Yarn install, it's just going to go and it's going to grab the package file, the JSON file, and it's going to install all your dependencies for you. So check out the repository, go into that directory, and do a Yarn install. That's going to get you set up and running. Then all you need to do is run Yarn chain. Okay, so Yarn chain is going to exactly that. It's going to spin up a copy of Hardhat and all of the play money accounts that you have that you can kind of start toying around with your smart contract. And then everything in Scaffold ETH, you kind of use like multiple windows. So your first window that you have here is you're always going to have it open, because it's going to, if you want to print anything out of like Hardhat in your smart contract to console, you'll want to be able to see that there. Or if you want to see your contract calls or something like that, that's going to always be there. And then in this next window, same directory, you do a Yarn start. So that's going to spin up a copy of React. In this case, it's React Next.js build. And it's going to start running that on port localhost 3000. Real quick, real snappy. So again, you'll always have that directory open, right? So it's kind of like your back end, which is your smart contract, and then you have your front end, which is React, right? And then if we come in here to this kind of like third window, we can do what's called a Yarn deploy. So let's do Yarn deploy. And what it's going to do is Scaffold ETH comes with a kind of like go-to like starting smart contract, okay? So if we come to our UI, refresh, localhost 3000, we'll see Scaffold ETH, right? So this is running in Next.js. And we'll see a couple interesting things right away. We have these kind of like tabs up top. The first tab is interesting. It's the debug contracts. It's kind of the secret sauce to Scaffold ETH. What it does is it actually pulls in the smart contract. It it builds a UI for you with all of your functions, and it also builds a UI that has all your variables, right? So we can instantly see that we have this contract that's been loaded. We can see the address. We can see if it has any balance. We can see what network it's on. We can also see like some functions, which allow us to like read some kind of counter, and then we also have like a write function, and we also have this withdraw function, which allows us to like pull money from the contract. And then we can see here that we have a variable called greeting, which is just like this kind of like hello world example, and we can see that there's an owner. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then we can also see that there's like some other variables here, counter. And so I could actually just come in here and just start toying with the contract. So there's this kind of like I said, a hello world example where it's just, hey, what is the greeting? And it's building unstoppable apps. Let's update it. So if I come in here, just type foo and hit send, it's going to tell me I don't have a balance, right? I don't have any way to pay the gas for the transaction. So what you'll notice about Scaffold ETH is it comes with this burner wallet automatically added to the app. So you don't have to worry about connecting MetaMask. You can just instantly grab some funds from the faucet with this little button, and you're up and running. So now we have 1 ETH in our account, and then I can hit the transaction and update the state, right, of the smart contract, just with those 2 little clicks. So you can see how we're just up and running quickly with this kind of like DApp. And then it also has functionality where you can actually like pull up an example UI. So you can actually see kind of like what an interface would look like of updating that greeting, how you can pass a value. So in this case, we're passing some ETH and we're paying the gas, and then we're able to keep the count here. I could come over here and say, what's up, foo, like this, and total count, and hit send, and it'll update that to 2. And we'll see that it updates it into the UI, right? And now we'll see, if we go back to debug contracts, we'll see that our balance has been adjusted, because here in this UI, we're actually passing in some value. So let's take a look at the source code. And by the way, if you ever want to just redeploy your contract, you can just do a yarn deploy reset, and it will force a new copy of the contract to come. So you can see now it went back to unstoppable apps. So it's just really a way to where you can rapidly get up and running and do some prototyping, right, on the fly. So let's go ahead and let's load up the code for the project, okay? So I use VS Code, and let's see what we got here. So there's a packages folder, which has really just 2 packages, your backend, your front end. It has Hardhat, and then it has Next.js. And then inside this contracts folder is where we have our copy of our contract. So let's kind of just start hacking away at it a little bit. It's a rather simple contract. Again, it's just this contract called your contract. We have some variables we're defining, and I'm just gonna hack away some stuff right now and just kind of show you how we can get to a different state. Let's take away the constructor. Because we're passing in some arguments like an address. Let's get rid of that, and then later on we would just do stuff here like this. We're not going to do anything. Let's also kind of wipe out this. Let's see, new greeting. We can even take away the value here, which changes the variable. We can do some changes. We can save that, and if we go to try to do a deploy, right, and reset again, we're going to get an error message. We're going to see a couple things. First of all, we have this requirement that's here, so we got to get rid of that. So let's get rid of the modifier, because we're going to do something differently. A modifier is kind of a way for you to do access control, but we're going to do something different. And then let's go into the deploy contracts folder. So again, Scaffold ETH uses Hardhat, and so there is this concept of you have this deploy script that runs and deploys your contract. And what we're getting here is we're trying to deploy the contract, but we're trying to send this variable over. Let's do it one more time, and let's just see what happens. We should get an error that's saying that we have this function. Oh, we have another withdraw function. We need to get rid of that. So we're just kind of let's get rid of the withdraw function as well. Save that. And you see what we're doing. We're just trying to kind of get our contract in a working state by just coming back and forth. And now we're getting a deployment error. And that's because we're trying to deploy this contract. And originally, we were passing in the deployer account as the kind of the owner. And so you can see right here in the deploy script, here is where we're getting a copy of the named accounts from Hardhat, and then we're using that in this argument. So we don't want to pass that into the constructor anymore, so let's just copy that out. But if you did want to, you could pass stuff in here. You could pass a supply for your token, or you could pass a hard-coded value, whatever you wanted to into this args option. But we're getting an error, so let's comment that out. So you can see it's this kind of back and forth going between. Now we were able to successfully deploy our contract. And now we can see kind of what it looks like in the front end. So let's go back, go to debug contracts, and you can see we kind of have a more minimal version of that, right? And so what I did is I extracted a lot of like the stuff that comes with Scaffold ETH that's kind of like hard-coded code. And one of those concepts is this concept of like access control. Like you might have a function that you want to control access to, right? So before we were hard coding all that stuff. Well, there's a lot easier way to do that, and that's by importing another contract that already has that functionality. And more specifically, it's using what's called Open Zeppelin ownable. So anyone who doesn't know Open Zeppelin is kind of like the de facto kind of like starting contracts. They're like trusted and approved, and they're kind of like what you would use to do some kind of functionality, like an ERC20 or a 1155 or a 720. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to import the contract this way. So we're going to import the Open Zeppelin contracts, which are already installed into the package file that we did earlier, so they're available. And then we can inherit all the stuff that comes with that. So let's go is ownable like this. Sorry, if I can type right. Okay, so we've kind of like inherited that now, and then let's go ahead and try to redeploy again. And you see this kind of like, this is what you're doing with Scaffold ETH. You're deploying, and you can see up here in the left that you're getting your contract calls. You can see that your UI is reloading, and you can see that you're able to deploy the contract, and then we can go back and see what's going on. So one thing I want to point out is like this owner, right? The owner of the smart contract is not kind of what we have in our burner wallet. So the first thing you might want to do is try to take control of your smart contract deployment. And so you'll notice that after we did ownable, we got some new functions. One of them is renounce ownership, which is a part of an inherited function that comes with ownable. And then we also have this transfer ownership, so we can transfer the contract to another user. So we can call that in the deploy script that I was talking about earlier. So let's load that back up. Hopefully you guys are following. And by the way, if you're not following along, this is all recorded and it's been given before. You can look on YouTube. So if you're not able to follow along. But what we can do now is we can see here there's like a comment below where it shows that we're getting a copy of our contract and what it would look like to do that. And so we can kind of like comment that out. And let's, I just like to do caps here. So let's do that. And so here we're deploying the contract, right? And then here we can get a copy of the contract to do something interesting, like maybe call the function. So that's exactly what we want to do. So let's do an await. Let's call the contract, and let's do the transfer ownership. And let's pass in the private key that we have access to, or the public key we have access to. So it's this one. Copy the address, come over here, and then paste it in. So now we can close this off and redeploy again. And so we've taken our smart contract, we've kind of gutted it a little bit, we've ripped out some of the stuff that comes with it, we've instead using ownable, and so now we have access to the contract. So you'll see here the owner matches our address that we have here. So let's kind of take that a step further, and let's say that we had this function that we wanted to protect. So here we have set greeting. Let's just say for some reason we only wanted like the owner to be able to change the greeting. So we could do like a require, normally we could do like a require statement here, but we don't need to do that because we have access to all of the modifiers with ownable as well. And so one of those is called only owner. So we can just type that here, hit save, and again, redeploy, and we can restrict access to that function. So now if I come over here to this, and let me open up an incognito window, and let's go to localhost 3000. And one thing you'll notice is we get a new burner wallet. So now we have two identities that we can start testing with. We got our identity that's here, and we have this kind of like rogue little like kind of brown, purple, blocky guy, right? So let's get some funds. Let's go to debug contracts, and let's say like, I don't know, I am here like this, and try to hit send. It's going to tell me that I'm not the owner, right? So I've set up this kind of cool access control for a function, but that's actually not really quite interesting when it comes to a smart contract. Like if you have a function that only the owner can call, what's the point of having the smart contract deployed? So let's do something a little different. Let's instead get rid of the only owner here, and let's do something like a require statement. So one of the next things you'll learn with like smart contract deployment is you might want to like set some kind of rule. And so one of the things that you can do is get message.value. And you can make sure that it's equal to some value. So let's do price, and then if you don't pass in this value, then you're going to get an error message, say like not enough cash, something like that. And let's close that off, and then we can set that price up above. So we can say, all right, let's do it right below here. So uint public price equals 0.01 ETH, or like that. Boom. Save that, and then deploy. So instead of having this smart contract that is kind of like restricted to the owner, now we're going to require that someone actually passes some value. So it's going to serve some kind of function to act as a bank. So now we can say, all right, now we got this kind of like incognito guy. He should be able to change this to like, hey, I'm cool, or something like that. And what you'll see here is interesting. Like, you think you could just put like 0.01 here, and that would work. But that's not going to work because obviously you need to transact in Way. And so here we're putting in the ETH value, but there's this cool thing that will do the math for you here. So obviously, if you are familiar with the concept of like Way to ETH, basically 1 ETH is times 10 to the 18th power in Way. And so there's this little button here that will do the math for you. So then you can just hit send, and then boom, successfully we were able to update that thing. But there's a problem. Does anyone know what the problem is? The funds are stuck there. There's no way to get them out. I ripped out the withdraw, right? So let's go ahead and let's write that withdraw back in. So let's come down here, and let's do function withdraw, and let's do like that, and let's make it public. But in this case, what we're going to do is say only owner, okay? Because we want to restrict access to that function. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a message. So we could do like a message dot sender. Actually, you know what, we'll just kind of save that because I'm running out of time. So let me kind of like go back and let me just redeploy these changes and make sure everything's good. I want to dive a little bit into the front end, because if you're building a project this weekend, then I would highly recommend you look at Scaffold ETH, because it has like a lot of this stuff already written for you. But I also want to showcase real quick what the front end code looks like as well. So if you go to the Next.js folder, and then you go into the pages directory, there's your app.tsx file, which is kind of like the main application for your application, and then you're inheriting everything here. Everything's kind of wrapped around this. And then inside this components folder is where we have the example UI, and then we have the various like tooling that is basically built into Scaffold ETH. But more importantly, we can look at the contract data folder. So if you want to start making changes to your app, then you might want to go to the Scaffold ETH, example UI, contract interaction, and then you can start building your app, right? Inside this kind of like concept. So again, it's all TypeScript. If you prefer not using TypeScript and you want to use JavaScript, you could use the original version of Scaffold ETH. I think we're probably going to have like a version that's supporting JavaScript as well and TypeScript, so it's kind of up to you. But you're going to get a similar experience with Scaffold ETH 1 as well. Okay, so if you're kind of new to like writing smart contracts and you're hacking, what I would always recommend is kind of do what I was doing, start kind of like toying around with Solidity. Solidity by example is just a really good resource if you want to kind of learn by example and like implement some interesting things. So like, let's just say like you took like the Hello World. Actually, that's a bad example. Let me go to like first app. Here we have like a contract and we have some functions. We could literally just kind of grab this code here and put it into our contract up here like this, save it, and redeploy it. So use Solidity by example with Scaffold ETH to kind of implement features and functionality, redeploy your changes, and then you can come in here and test. So let's go back, and then we can see that now that we've done that, we've been able to add this kind of like incrementer and decrementer into this thing, and we can see the transaction receipt. And so you can see how the UI automatically adjusts for you. And then from here, you could take your contract and you could deploy it to a testnet as well. So one of the concepts that I will say is that we're using hard hat for everything we're doing. So we're doing local deployments. So if let's say you want to do testnet stuff and you're kind of like working with a team, right? And you don't want to work locally and you want to work on a testnet, you can do a yarn run generate like this. And what it's going to do is it's going to generate a mnemonic and store it, the private key inside of the environment variable for you. And then all you have to do is do a yarn account like this. And it's going to spit out a QR code. So if I wanted to, I could grab my phone. If I had some Guidl ETH on here, I could scan this, send some ETH from my phone or from MetaMask to this address, and then instantly I have a deployer account. And all I would need to do is do a yarn deploy -- network, and then pass in the network I want to deploy to. So in this case, squarely, like that. And it would work if I was to take the time to fund this wallet, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. And then on top of that, we can take our React code. So if, let's say you want to push this to an endpoint, because right now we're running this all locally, you can do yarn build. And what it's going to do is going to take, I thought it was yarn build. So we can look at the package file. Okay, I thought it was yarn build, but for some reason it's not working. Maybe they haven't added that. But yeah, so you could just use the build a static site, and then you could, it looks like that feature is not there. So with original Scaffold ETH, you could do a yarn build, and then you could like push it out to like some kind of repository. But you would have to like build it with Next.js and push that out to a public repo. So hopefully that's like kind of a good overview of like why you would use Scaffold ETH, especially for like a hackathon project, or if you like want to be able to rapidly prototype. And then, I have a POAP, so come see me if you want my POAP. I'll give it to you. It's this cool like Amsterdam Scaffold ETH POAP. If you want to get more information on Scaffold ETH, this is a contact card with like the GitHub repo, the docs, pretty much everything you need to get started up and running. One thing I will say also in this link, there's a Telegram channel. And the Telegram channel is awesome because there's over 2,000 developers in that kind of channel that can help support each other. So it's a really cool community. And if you're looking to kind of do more with Scaffold ETH after the fact, what I would say is there's an awesome website called Speedrun Ethereum. Speedrun Ethereum is, let me unlock this real quick. Speedrun Ethereum is this cool platform where it kind of like has you go through these steps to kind of like try your experience by doing these challenges. So like the first one, you deploy an NFT, then you deploy a staking app, then you deploy a token vendor, and then basically you get invited after you finish those first three to the Buidl Guild. And so the Buidl Guild has over 700 developers, and it's a pretty cool community up and coming in the Ethereum space. And there's even more challenges that you can do, like you can build a DEX, you can do a multi-sig, right? An SVG NFT. So there's all these really cool things that you can do that will kind of like test your ability. And then you can kind of use that as your like, resume, right? You can say, oh, look at all this cool stuff I built on Scaffold ETH, right? So come see me for the POAP, and I'm going to leave a couple minutes here for questions. So if anyone has questions that I can answer. No questions? Yep. Oh, yeah. So as far as the UI framework, so that's a good question. For a while, it was using, let's see if I can look it up. I'm trying to remember what they switched to, because this is a rather new version. Let's see. So, yeah, I'm not sure which UI they're using. For a while, mostly I think it's Rainbow Kit stuff, right? So it's a lot of Rainbow Kit. And then for CSS, I don't remember what they're using for CSS, but there's some stuff hard-coded here as well. But it looks like Rainbow and WAGMI, yep. Yeah, so the question was, what's the difference between Scaffold ETH 1 and Scaffold ETH 2? So Scaffold ETH 1 is built around mainly React. There's a lot more repositories with Scaffold ETH 1 since it's been around for a lot longer. So there's a lot more like use case examples, like let's say you want to deploy a NFT, right? There's already a branch. So you can go to, let me kind of load it up real quick. So if you go to Scaffold ETH, not 2, but just 1, and you come up here to the top left, and let's just say you want to deploy an NFT, you can do a search, and there's a bunch of different examples of NFTs. So there's a little bit more information out there. It also has some more features that haven't been put in Scaffold ETH 2. Like I was just trying to do a build. That's not there yet. So there might be some things that you just get a little different. Also, like I said, it's only React. It's not Next.js. It's just JavaScript as well. So if you prefer JavaScript and you're afraid of TypeScript, then Scaffold ETH 1 might be a good thing to use. And it still works great. Yeah. So, but yeah, today I was just showing off Scaffold ETH 2. Yeah, no worries. Any other questions? Nope. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming, and you guys enjoy the conference.